Hi guys, so today we're going to go over my critical appraisal of technology that I chose to do on an electronic medical record update that occurred in the unit that I used to work in. Alright guys, so we're going to start with the clinical setting with where I chose to do my project, and that again was at a unit that I worked in at Geisinger Medical Center in Danville, Pennsylvania. I worked in a couple of different units there, so I'm just going to kind of stick to the three that are paired together for management purposes. The neuroscience ICU, the MICU, and also the SICU, the medical ICU and the surgical ICU, they're all managed by the same operations manager. So I'm going to kind of try to stick to that in terms of my interviews and stuff like that you'll see in further slides. But basically there's 196 staff members in those three units, and then there's also another 62 in the trauma ICU and another 94 in the cardiovascular ICU. So moving on to the interview portion of the critical appraisal, I chose to do my first interview on the operations manager of the neuroscience ICU, medical ICU, and surgical ICU. He was formerly my operations manager, and his role is to make sure that all the daily processes and the way that an ICU is run goes smoothly, and with that is making sure that all policies, procedures, conduct, all that's kind of a tight ship, and make sure that everything is productive and keeps moving things forward. So his role in this update is that he makes sure that the nurses that he manages have all the assets in order to make this a smooth process. So he makes sure that we have all the education that we need, and all the different tutorials, and every type of tool that we can utilize to kind of make the Epic transition, the EMR update transition smooth. That's kind of his job in this. He kind of gives us all those little bits and pieces that makes our lives a little bit easier. So the next person that I interviewed was the information technology nurse specialist. He didn't necessarily have that title at Geisinger, but that's how I'm going to refer to him. He was called our Epic liaison. Basically, he was a member of our education team, and he went with the IT Epic developers who designed the update, gave them different policies, procedures, gave them all the insight from a nursing perspective, and then also was trained by them how to troubleshoot, how to educate us as staff nurses, and how to kind of really bridge that gap between technology and hands-on people like ourselves as nurses. So basically his role was very important because he volunteered for it, and he kind of made sure that all the education was accurate, and that all questions were answered while he was there. And I'll mention this later, but our operations manager even gave him some time away from the bedside where he could kind of really focus and go around and just kind of answer questions, show people new things, and kind of show them how this update can really make their lives and their patients' lives a little bit easier. So my third and final interview was actually an interview with one of just the regular staff nurses on our unit. It was a friend of mine, and I kind of just spoke to her and said, what is your perception of this? What is, how does this affect you on a day-to-day basis? As an ICU nurse, time is everything. Sometimes you have seconds to do something, or you have a minute, or those little nuances that the more comfortable you get, the faster you are. That's really a huge thing in the intensive care world. So I just kind of wanted to see what her thoughts were, how it was affecting the staff nurses. Does it throw people off? Do people like it? Just different things like that. And I just figured that input was very valuable, with it being that the main two people that this is affecting are the day-to-day nurses and the patients that they take care of. So now to answer the actual question of what is this update, or what is this Epic EMR transition that the ICUs were trying to implement, or Geisinger Health System was trying to implement. Basically what it is it is a form of a portal, and Epic refers to it as the brain. And what you do is the nurse can put their patient's medical information into this portal, and once that goes into the portal, the technology looks at the patient. It looks at the devices they have, the diagnosis they have, and any other information that they may need to be looked at, and it develops a set of to-dos, or like a schedule that the nurse can follow hour by hour, day by day. And what this does is it creates this consistency of care and this consistency of charting, which the consistency of charting helps the hospital because things are documented correctly, and where the consistency of care comes in is, as an ICU nurse, people forget things. Little things, drain might not get emptied, or, a Foley bag might not get drained, or, just little things that if you're having a busy day, it's hard to remember. That's why they wanted to implement the brain. So the brain kind of gives you hour by hour, gives you a set of tasks that need to be done, and if they are done, they will give you a little check mark. And if they aren't, they'll give you a little alert before the end of your shift. So that way you can make sure that everything gets done in that 12-hour period or 8-hour period, whatever you're working, and there can just be this consistent flow of quality care. So moving on to the primary user's opinion. So as we can all kind of suspect, although nurses are big movers for change and we really believe in evidence-based practice, I think we can all agree that we've seen some pushback from nurses or ourselves, or just other fellow colleagues, that they didn't really want the change to occur just because there was some anxiety with it, or that they didn't really understand why we were doing it. And that's kind of what happened here. It wasn't anything major, but once everyone kind of started to understand what it was and why it was helpful, and all the advantages, which we'll get at too in just a moment, they kind of understood. But the big thing was it changed the whole layout of what the chart looked like. And as any experienced nurse or person that's worked in a hospital for a multitude of years, once you kind of get comfortable with charting, you can breeze through that with your eyes closed. So, you change some people's, charting layout, then, everything gets antsy and people get, kind of agitated. But once they kind of saw the advantages to it, and they kind of saw that, people really, it made their lives easier. The consistency part of it, the lists, just making sure that every task was done, all those things that at the end of the day when you're scrambling after a busy day, those things are already kind of documented in the brain, and you can just peek back at it at the end of your shift and just be like, okay, did I get through 8, 9, 10, 11, all those hours that you were there? You can just gracefully look back at it and just be like, all right, yep, good. We got everything finished, and yes, there are some disadvantages. More experienced nurses, they kind of seemed like they were a bit disgruntled with it because they kind of felt like they were being belittled as nurses, and they felt like a part of their skill set was being taken away. But in all honesty, it really just helped the consistency of quality for our patients. And it also helped the hospital with making sure that things were documented accordingly, because we all agree that sometimes things get missed. So that's kind of why this helped so much. So next we're going to talk about the support within Geisinger as an organization. And honestly, it was top notch. They really, from upper level administration all the way down to the staff nurses, they really made it a continuous support system. The operations managers set up different classes and tutorials and stuff like that were available to us nurses just during the day. So no one had to stay extra hours or come in on an off day. They kind of managed to schedule a couple of resource nurses so that they could watch your patient while you went and quick did a half-hour tutorial. And then also the administration and the managers allowed for our nurse specialist that I interviewed to take a month where he just came around, and all of the work days he just made sure that the unit ran smoothly and no one had a hard time with it. And if someone did, he sat with them for as long as they needed to kind of make it that it was the smoothest process for them. The other thing is the Epic IT department was also great. They provided 24-hour around-the-clock care to the nurses who maybe didn't get that nurse specialist benefit or those daytime tutorials. So for the night shift population, this was really a big thing, and it kind of just helped make the process smooth 24 hours, 7 days a week, which is what we do as nurses. So overall, the support through the organization was very unified. So as we said earlier, there was really two main kind of reasons as to why this decision was made to, change this, update this EMR that Epic provided Geisinger. And basically those were, number one, patient consistency of care. So it was being noticed that, as no human is perfect and no human is the same, that there was some lapses in care and some tasks were being forgotten, whether a nurse was busy or, maybe they just forgot or whatever. And then the second thing was that things weren't being charted as consistently as they should have been. And, when, as all hospitals do, when they would bring in accreditation companies or organizations such as, JACO, for example, they would go through charts and they would see things that were insufficient and, or charted incorrectly. And this would lead to fines and different negative effects for the hospital. So, therefore, this brain, Epic update kind of killed two birds with one stone, and it led to a more consistent care, and it also led to a more consistent charting of that care. So it really overall, when the departments of risk management and IT and upper management and the operation managers kind of got together, they kind of really found that this was the best solution. As for some recommendations based on the outcome of this critical appraisal, I really don't think that there's something for me to recommend to Geisinger to change, but what I will recommend is that they continue to do what they did so well. They provided their nurses with the support that they needed from those top administrators on down. They solved two major problems with their consistency with the implementation of this update. But I think the main thing that will keep the peace, if you will, with this transition is the fact that their continuity of troubleshooting help and their continuing education with it, all that stuff will help continue the benefit of this update. And things like for the night shifters, keeping the Epic IT troubleshooting helpline. That's something that, as a former night shift nurse, when you're having a situation like this and you're trying to take care of people's lives as well, it's just an unneeded inconvenience. So, just doing that and continuing that, because not everyone has, a question the time that something's introduced. Sometimes it takes a little bit of working with it until you really find some good quality questions that you may need answered. So as we've come to the end of this critical appraisal process, I'd just like to, thank you for the viewing, and I also wanted to share with you my references. Thank you so much.